Nobody knows his real age. Sensei, healing master, has always just been there. Or at least that's what the people of Kyushu, Japan believe. When Sachiko, an 87-year-old woman healed by Sensei, was interviewed, she told the reporter that Sensei had also healed her grandmother 40 years ago. Asked if Sensei was then a young man, Sachiko replied, "He looked exactly the same as he looks now." Estimates of Sensei's age range from 75 to over 150 years. Some people believe he has been healing people for centuries. Some actually believe he is immortal. Whatever his age, two facts are clear. Sensei has been healing people in Japan for a very long time, and the miraculous concoctions that he uses to heal with have had profound effects on even the most hopeless. A typical example is Noriko, who suffered from terrible health problems. For years, she was unable to eat anything but mild, bland rice porridge, which she still had a hard time keeping down. Her stomach problems were accompanied by intense joint pain, dizzy spells, insomnia, constant fatigue, and bouts of depression, brought on by her feelings of hopelessness. She always caught colds and flu that took months to depart her weak and frail body. Noriko was a city girl, born and raised in Tokyo. Like most Tokyo people, Noriko was westernized to the point where she no longer believed in her country's traditional remedies. Hence, Noriko had relied on ever-increasing doses of modern drugs, all of which only gave her occasional relief, sometimes followed by severe side effects. When her doctor told Noriko there was nothing more he could do for her, she was devastated. But what he said next floored her. He told her she should visit an old man who lived in a mountain village in Kyushu Prefecture. The old man was simply called Sensei. Noriko could hardly believe her ears. Had her doctor lost his mind? He couldn't heal her, but instead was sending her to see a hermit who probably didn't know the first thing about real medicine. Japan was filled with so-called healers who lived in the mountains. Educated people would never dream of actually using them in place of a licensed doctor. "Just go," her doctor said. "You've got nothing to lose, and you may be pleasantly surprised." The doctor didn't tell Noriko that he had personal knowledge of Sensei's healing powers. Sensei had healed the doctor's gravely ill daughter after he and his colleagues had failed. Noriko did indeed have nothing to lose. In fact, she was desperate. She couldn't live another day in her miserable condition. She reluctantly took the Shinkansen, bullet train, that afternoon direct to Nagasaki. From there, she boarded a small train for the mountain village of Otamaru. Her doctor had instructed her to ask anyone in the village where to find Sensei. You'll have no problem finding him. Upon arriving in Otamaru, she asked the train conductor at the station if he knew how to find Sensei. He smiled and pointed to a mountain about 2 kilometers away and said, "Take the trail that goes to the top of the mountain. You will find Sensei there." He lives in a small ryokan, a traditional house. Noriko inquired if she could take a cab, but was told that she would have to walk. The road was too small for cars. Noriko was tired and felt weak from her trip, but she had no choice. She began walking up the trail towards Sensei's house. It cut through a lush green forest, accented by elegant bamboo shoots, ferns, and wildflowers. Everywhere there were sounds of cicadas and birds. It was a warm, pleasant evening, not humid as she feared. She was struck by the beauty that surrounded her. The more she took in the scenery, the better she felt. Her depression was lifting. When she arrived at the mountain top, she actually felt elated. Sensei was vigorously chopping wood in his garden. He greeted her without looking up, somehow aware of her presence. "Konbanwa, good evening," he said calmly, and then turned and looked directly at her. Sensei had a gentle, kind face that gave the impression of deep wisdom and compassion. He was old, but certainly not feeble. His full head of hair was snow white. His clear almond eyes were lively, almost comical. He invited her inside for warm tea. Noriko talked to Sensei about her health problems while sipping an unusual but pleasant-tasting tea. His only response was to ask if she would like to go outside and watch the moon rise above the forest. It's so beautiful this time of the month. She paused, not answering, and then returned to her health problems. Sensei listened carefully and then once again asked her to join him on the veranda to watch the moon. He got up and walked outside. Noriko followed. Sensei was right. The moon looked spectacular as it eased above the dark tree line. It was enormous. Soon she forgot her health problems and was content just being in Sensei's presence. When the time came to leave, Sensei handed her a small bag containing a fine brown powder. He instructed her to mix it in cool or warm water and make a tea that she should drink every morning and every evening just before sleeping. On the train ride back to Tokyo, Noriko fell into a deep, relaxed, restful sleep. The following week, she did exactly as Sensei instructed. By the end of the week, she had more energy and vitality than she had ever experienced in her life. She could eat anything without a problem. She enjoyed full nights of blissful sleep. She was alive, finally really alive. She would continue to visit Sensei. Dr. Kumato, who was introduced to Sensei years ago by his most revered college teacher, had witnessed Sensei heal countless individuals. In many cases, these individuals would have been certainly labeled hopeless by modern doctors. For more than 30 years, Dr. Kumato had tried in vain to convince Sensei to reveal his amazing healing formulas. Dr. Kumato was famous in his own right. Educated as a biochemist, he was the founder of Kumato Labs, internationally renowned for bringing traditional Japanese remedies to the world. Dr. Kumato believed deeply in the union of science and nature. His genius lay in his ability to mass-produce traditional remedies, using strict pharmaceutical manufacturing standards without compromising the synergistic effects of the original formula. Kumato Labs had built its great reputation by producing health products of impeccable quality. But Dr. Kumato knew his product line would never be complete until he had Sensei's secret healing formulas. He considered them to be the crown jewels of Japan's traditional healing remedies. Perhaps the greatest healing formulas, not only in Japan, but in all the world. Nothing he had ever seen produced by other health companies approached the effectiveness of Sensei's healing formulations. He was aware that Sensei was using many of the same ingredients other traditional healing formulas contained, but Sensei had somehow discovered the golden combinations. Every month, Dr. Kumato would visit Sensei in hopes of convincing him to finally reveal his precious healing formulas. Sometimes he waited for hours to talk with Sensei, who was usually busy attending people in need. When Sensei broke free, he kindly listened to Dr. Kumato's pleas, but always gave the same answer: nature holds the secret, not I. It didn't matter how he asked the question or how many times he asked, the answer was always the same. Over the years, Dr. Kumato had all but accepted that Sensei would never reveal his secret healing formulas to him. However, Dr. Kumato had grown so fond of Sensei that he never missed his monthly trip to the mountains. Just to see and talk to the people that Sensei healed was more than enough. On one visit, he met Yoshi, who impressed Dr. Kumato because of his boundless energy and vitality. When Yoshi spoke about Sensei, it was as if he was speaking about the Buddha himself. According to Yoshi, who was 97, he made his first trip to visit Sensei when he was 86. Yoshi heard about Sensei from a friend whose sister had been healed by Sensei. At that time, Yoshi believed he would die soon, but was not ready. Yoshi related how his life force was nearly gone when he decided to make the arduous 1600-kilometer journey by train from Hokkaido to Kyushu. He didn't know if he would survive the train ride. When he finally arrived at the base of the mountain, he could no longer walk. He felt what little life force he had leaving his body. He lost consciousness. Yoshi was not sure what happened next. When he awoke, he was lying on his back upon a futon in Sensei's house. Sensei gave him a warm drink. It tasted different from anything he knew, but it wasn't bad. By the next day, Yoshi's life force was returning. Yoshi said he was given the same warm drink each day by Sensei. Soon he noticed his shaky hands had steadied and his energy was increasing, substantially increasing. So profound was his recovery that Yoshi volunteered to stay and work in whatever manner he could to help Sensei. Apparently, Sensei agreed, because when Dr. Kamato talked to Yoshi, he had been living on the mountain for 11 years. In no way was Yoshi's story unique. It was rather typical. Kyoko, who wouldn't give her age to Dr. Kamato, told him how she had been healed by Sensei of a chronic condition of nerves. So terrible was her anxiety, she almost never left her house. One morning, the man who delivered her groceries told her about Sensei, who had recently healed his aunt of a similar condition. Kyoko realized she lived only 30 kilometers from Sensei, but the thought of actually going out in public, riding on a train, seeing unfamiliar people, maybe forgetting something, or heaven forbid, getting lost in a strange town, was more than she could bear. And besides, none of the medicine her doctors gave her ever did any good. No, she wouldn't go to see him. And who knows, he probably couldn't heal her anyway. And besides, none of the medicine her doctors gave her ever did any good. 2 days later, a woman showed up at her door. She was the grocery delivery man's aunt. She said she would accompany Kyoko on her visit to Sensei. They should leave right away. Before Kyoko could object, the woman gently took her hand, shut the front door, and led her to the train station. Kyoko was nearly in shock. Her heart was racing. She could hardly breathe, but for some reason she held onto the woman's hand and followed her. She looked straight ahead while riding on the train, never venturing a glance at the many strangers. Finally, on their walk up the trail leading to Sensei's house, Kyoko began to relax, but not completely. It was only after she finished the warm drink that Sensei gave her upon arriving that she completely relaxed. Kyoko told Dr. Kamato that she stayed at Sensei's house for 3 months. Tears ran down her cheeks as she explained how Sensei had completely transformed her life. Before her visit to Sensei, Kyoko would awaken very late in the morning. She almost never exercised, fearing both the outdoors and the possibility that she might injure herself during even the slightest physical exertion. Her main activity was eating. She was considerably overweight, an unusual condition for a Japanese woman. It was hard for Dr. Kamato to imagine that this thin, attractive woman talking confidently to him could have ever been overweight or, for that matter, insecure. While staying with Sensei, Kyoko began to awaken earlier. After 1 week, she got up regularly at sunrise. Kyoko started each day with the same warm drink prepared by Sensei. Soon her ferocious appetite began to subside. Her energy increased by leaps and bounds. She found herself taking long walks in the forest, at first alone, and then with other people who would drop by to see Sensei. She was making friends for the first time in her life. Kyoko discovered that she adored the outdoors, but what she loved most was talking to people. So much so that Kyoko later became employed as a public speaking teacher in her hometown, winning several awards for her activities. She was also now the official spokeswoman for SPN, the local society for the preservation of nature. Kyoko made it a point to see Sensei every month, to walk in the forest, make more new friends, and of course to get a fresh supply of Sensei's very special drink. It was seeing healing miracles like Yoshi, Kyoko, and numerous others that always made Dr. Kamato's journey to the mountain worthwhile, even if Sensei would never reveal his incredible formulas to him. Thus, Dr. Kamato was utterly shocked on his 372nd visit when, instead of giving his usual reply to Dr. Kamato's perfunctory request, Sensei said, "What are you going to do with it?" For a moment, Dr. Kamato didn't know what Sensei meant or what to say, but he was acutely aware that this was a profound moment. He paused and then said, "I will try and help as many people as I can." Sensei gave no reply. He simply walked to the back room of his house and then returned with a scroll. He invited Dr. Kamato to sit and enjoy a cup of green tea. Sensei placed the scroll on the tatami mat next to the low tea table. He sat down, crossed his legs in lotus position, and began to tell a story. A story Dr. Kamato had waited for more than 30 years to hear. My family has kept a secret since the reign of the 10th shogun. My direct ancestor was the shogun's personal physician. He was entrusted with his health, but unlike physicians today, if the patient fell ill, the physician was held responsible. So serious was the offense of allowing the shogun to fall ill that my grandfather would have been ordered to perform harakiri to take his own life. Fortunately for my grandfather, the shogun, who was known as the Tiger Shogun, never became ill. He was famous in all of Japan for his robust health. He led his samurai into battle when he was in his 90s. The Tiger Shogun was so healthy that he perished at over 100 years, not from bad health, but from an accident while racing his horse. All physicians at that time knew of the power of nature to provide all that was necessary to stay healthy. The great natural healing medicines of Japan come from the work of our intrepid ancestors. What distinguished my ancestor from all other physicians was his discovery of the golden combination, a precise formulation of nature's gifts, so powerful at increasing ki, the life force, that he was forced to sign an oath ensuring that he would never reveal it. My ancestor would only be allowed to pass the formulation to the shogun's direct heir. The shogun knew that if a rival shogun got hold of this mighty formula, he too would possess limitless health, something no shogun would desire of his rival. The shoguns have been gone for a long time, but my family has always kept the golden combination a secret. Over the years, the decision was made to use the formula to help common people, but my family has never revealed the secret. To do so, they thought would dishonor their ancestor. I have thought about this for a very long time. I have seen the power of the formula perform incredible wonders, but I could not bring myself to reveal the formula until now. I have watched you for a long time. I know you are a good man. I also know the time has now come for my ancestors' formula to help the people of the world. We Japanese have a hard time thinking about anybody but Japanese. For my entire life, I have thought it was enough just to help the people who found their way to my door. But the world has changed, and so have I. Sensei then proceeded to slowly unroll the scroll. The calligraphy was absolutely exquisite. The writing began with a poem. The great shogun thrives in all seasons. He overcomes by not opposing. He rules without ruling. He prospers when his subjects prosper. Harmony is his strength. There followed a shocking discovery. Instead of a description of the numerous healing formulas Dr. Kamato had thought Sensei was using, there was only one formula, entitled Chowa, harmony. That's what Sensei meant when he said, "What are you going to do with it?" There was only one formula, Chowa. As far as Dr. Kamato could tell, he was familiar with all the listed ingredients. However, he had never seen them combined in this extraordinary manner. A feeling of warmth rushed through his body, as he suddenly realized that he was the first person outside of Sensei's family, the first person for more than 800 years to have the privilege of viewing the golden combination. Sensei had indeed revealed a profound secret. Dr. Kamato knew he would have to devote a great deal of time and money to develop a proper method to manufacture Chowa in keeping with the traditional way of producing this amazing healing tonic. He must duplicate the formula precisely, or it could definitely diminish its mighty power. He wanted to make sure he got it absolutely right. He reasoned that the only way he could be certain that he would be faithful in the duplication process was to produce Chowa and then bring it to Sensei for testing. Sensei would immediately know if he had got it right. Dr. Kamato discussed his plan with Sensei, who laughed and said, "It's entrusted to you now, my friend." For the next 23 months, Dr. Kamato made his usual monthly trips to see Sensei. Each version of Chowa that he brought for Sensei's approval was flatly rejected. When Dr. Kamato asked him what was wrong, Sensei's reply was less than helpful. "If you would have given this to the shogun, he would have killed you himself." Sensei would then abruptly change the subject to some aspect of nature that expressed, as he put it, perfect harmony. Nearly 2 years had passed since receiving the great Chowa formula, and Dr. Kamato now felt he may never get it right. Could Sensei just be toying with him? Maybe Sensei had never really intended for Dr. Kamato to have his secret healing formula. He had tried everything. He had followed the precise instructions in preparing each ingredient. Every one of his company's scientists had reviewed the formula and assisted in its preparation, following the instructions to the letter. Each time they reformulated, they double-checked their procedures, varying only what they thought might be the problem. Each time they failed. They ran analyses of the different herbs to make sure they were the best quality and had highest potency. They strained the herbs using traditional strainers, not commercial extractors. They even boiled the water in traditional pots, going as far as to use antique pots that would have been used in the time of the 10th shogun. Nothing worked. Finally, they had exhausted all possible variations and means to duplicate Chowa. It was with a deep feeling of resignation that Dr. Kamato visited Sensei for what Dr. Kamato thought would be his last chance at getting Sensei's approval. The Chowa formula that he brought Sensei was almost identical to every other version he had brought him. After all, the instructions were quite clear about how to prepare the formula. The changes that had been made on each new try were minute and were limited to improving straining techniques or eliminating small impurities in individual herbs. Dr. Kamato took the last train out of Tokyo and arrived quite late in Otamaru. The station was closed. He had fallen asleep on the train and missed his dinner. Nothing was open in town. He was thirsty and hungry and now had to walk almost 2 miles up a steep trail to Sensei's house. He had no choice. It was a very humid night, so warm that even the night birds were silent. As he walked along the trail, he began to feel increasingly weak. He must have something to drink. It was almost without thinking that he opened the glass jar holding the new version of Chowa and took a sip. After all, it was only a sip and there was plenty for Sensei to try. He then realized that he had never actually tasted the formula. He had relied on Sensei to do the testing. It actually tasted quite pleasant. He took another sip and continued walking along the moonlit trail. When he arrived at Sensei's house, he was no longer tired. Sensei was on his porch, waiting for him as usual, aware of his coming, even though he had not talked to him since his last trip. "I see, you've got it right." "Got what right?" Dr. Kamato asked, confused. "Chowa," Sensei exclaimed. "You've always had it right. You simply needed to believe in it enough to try it on yourself. The instructions are clear. I have no power to give it. The power is in the formula. In order for you to understand the formula, you have to make it part of yourself. I see that you have done so. Dr. Kamato felt at once relieved, elated, and ridiculous. Of course, Sensei was right. The instructions were very clear. The one thing he had failed to do was actually try the formula on himself. Had he done the obvious, he would have known the formula was right. His energy was soaring. He was neither thirsty nor hungry. He seemed to see better, hear better, smell better. It was as if something had been lifted from his senses. He had a deep, incredibly deep sense of well-being. He was in perfect harmony with his surroundings. Yes, indeed, this was Chowa. From that day forward, Dr. Kamato drank Chowa every morning upon awakening. Dr. Kamato, now 75, had always considered himself extremely healthy. He exercised regularly and ate only healthy foods. Moreover, he had made it his life's mission to develop Japan's finest health products, which he used regularly. But still, when he began taking Chowa, he was literally astonished. His energy had increased to the point where he required very little sleep. His memory, both short-term and long-term, seemed to improve. It was like he had been given a new brain. He hadn't expected this. Thought processing was definitely different. He seemed to be able to access memories that were much more vivid. Colors, sounds, taste, emotions came rushing forth every time he recalled a past incident. Distant or recent, it didn't matter. He was connected to the world as never before. His balance was even better. Not that it was bad before, but now he felt like running down narrow stairways rather than walking. In short, he felt younger, much younger in all areas, especially one in particular: sex. Dr. Kamato had been responsible for developing for commercial use many traditional libido enhancers. Chowa was in a category by itself. After taking Chowa, he really contemplated if he should continue. He hadn't experienced constant urges at this level since he was a teenager. Indeed, he couldn't recall if he ever had such an overwhelming sex drive. Dr. Kamato was a lifelong student of Zen Buddhism, and because of this study, he was fortunately able to focus his reproductive energies elsewhere. Although he had to admit it was a pleasant feeling to feel so young in all its aspects, what was most peculiar was the way younger women seemed to be attracted to him at his present age. The reproductive energy that he was experiencing on a daily basis must have been seen and felt by the opposite sex at some level. It wasn't long before the employees of Kamato Labs noticed the change in their boss. Makoto, the manufacturing supervisor, was the first employee to begin taking Chowa. The results were immediate and equally profound. Soon, all the employees were taking Chowa daily. This was a problem. Chowa was not yet online for commercial levels of manufacture. It was still being produced in small quantities. Before full commercial manufacturing could begin, more analytical studies were necessary. The problem was that the employees were consuming Chowa faster than it could be made for the studies. There simply wasn't enough to go around. Finally, Dr. Kamato put his foot down and forbade any employee from taking Chowa until all analytical studies had been completed. His employees in turn worked at the feverish level to prepare Chowa for final approval and subsequent full commercial production. Dr. Kamato's intense analytical studies yielded some astounding findings. At the core of the Chowa formula were native Japanese mushroom extractions. Scientists have long understood that certain mushrooms rich in polysaccharides are capable of activating key components of your immune system, namely macrophages, which are considered your first line of defense against invaders. Kamato Labs discovered that the Chowa golden combination had extraordinary immune-enhancing effects. Chowa was literally an immune supercharger. Science had already established that the additional herbal ingredients found in Chowa were highly active, but never to the degree that Dr. Kamato verified when they were combined as instructed by the Chowa formula. The synergistic effects were truly profound. The studies confirmed that Chowa, the great Asian formula, the golden combination that was so jealously guarded by the Tiger Shogun, was indeed something to be cherished. Yes, the individual ingredients in Chowa were all known by Dr. Kamato, and yes, they all had substantial health benefits, but not anything like what he was now observing on virtually everyone who tried Chowa. Yoko was the mother of Nobu, the head accountant for Kamato Labs. She had been selected to try Chowa not because she was suffering from a particular health problem, but because she was suffering from the most common problem people have as they grow older, an ever-increasing malaise, a loss of vitality and eagerness. She was 91. One morning, 2 weeks later, the accountant walked into Dr. Kamato's office and told him that his mother was better, much better. What's more, she had returned to her life's great passion, the art of calligraphy. Apparently, 10 years ago, Yoko was forced to abandon her beloved art because her hands were no longer steady enough. Plus, her ability to concentrate, the essence of the art, was waning. Now, suddenly, she had resumed her art. Her hands were steady. Miraculously, she could concentrate at the level her art required. Yoko was overjoyed. She was completely transformed. It had to be because of Chowa. The accountant related how he had thought his mother's melancholy came simply from her old age. He hadn't appreciated what an incredible loss it must have been for his mother when she was forced to abandon her art. She had never once complained. Seeing how happy she now was made him realize why she really had been so unhappy. Chowa had changed both of their lives. Dr. Kamato leaned back in his chair and reflected on the great good that Chowa had accomplished over the centuries. He thought of all the people he would never know, all the people that Chowa through Sensei had helped. To experience limitless health, to discover the beauty and joy of life, the art of living, the passion for expression in whatever you do, that was Chowa. That was perfect harmony. That was the essence of Japan. How he hoped he could carry on Sensei's valuable work. How he hoped he could bring Chowa to the world. Dr. Kamato did indeed realize his dreams. After extensive testing, Dr. Kamato began manufacturing Chowa for commercial use. With no advertising, word spread. In little time, Chowa was his most popular formulation, dwarfing the sales of his other products. From a business standpoint, this was both good and bad. Sales of Chowa skyrocketed, but sales of his other products dropped off as customers began to realize that all that was necessary for greater health was Chowa. It is said that on one of Dr. Kamato's monthly trips to visit Sensei, he told him about the worldwide success of Chowa. He told him that it was even sold in America, and that Americans, like all people, loved Chowa. Sensei, as usual, said nothing, but Dr. Kamato did notice what he thought was a faint smile.